Steph and I have made our way down to South Louisiana, over near Hammond, Louisiana, to meet up with Buddy Lee, our friend Buddy Lee, who is the inventor of Encore Azaleas. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for visiting, man.
Yeah.
Enjoyed the visit.
I'll link some other videos that we've done with Buddy down below here. His very prolific plant breeder. It's a hard one to say. Buddy has introduced not only Encore Azaleas, but you guys have seen the Diamond Spire gardenia on the channel. You've seen white wedding hydrangeas. What am I missing? The Bayou Bliss Distillium.
And
cast in bronze Distillium. Right. there's a bunch of them. You've forgotten them.
I forget them. I can't keep track of the plants, but I'm proud of all of them. They really nice plants.
Behind us, there's a few azaleas.
Yes.
What's going on with your azaleas back here?
Well, these are. I kind of overdo it with azaleas, but there's about 25,000 seedlings here.
Okay.
And these were controlled pollinations from last April or so.
Gotcha.
We collected the seed in August, and we sowed the seed in December.
Right.
And then we keep them in the little 50s like this for about 3 or 4 months, and then we pot them in 4-inch containers.
Gotcha.
And we try to pot them early enough before the heat comes, but this year it's been hitting 100, you know. But they're doing well. They're doing well.
So this is your breeding work. So you're taking your current Encore Azaleas, ones that you know repeat bloom.
They're maybe not Encore per se, but in the same genetic makeup lines.
Gotcha.
A lot of these right here are like 2 to 3 generations, and I'm looking just for certain traits, and
Gotcha.
I'm trying to push them. And I think the seedlings, I like lots of seedlings because you can find more diversity, but it can run you ragged.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. This is a lot of planting and a lot of
of just just evergreen azaleas. Now there must be 12 to 14 hybrid lines or different pollinations here.
Right.
You know, I'm trying leaf color, fragrance, just all kind of stuff, you know, that I'm looking for.
Right. So when you say controlled pollination, how are you're taking the pollen out of one flower that has the traits that you want on that plant, and you're putting it in another flower.
Yeah, you know, when it's in bloom, I collect pollen, and a lot of times these plants are blooming at the same time, so I don't have to store it, but you can store it, and in these cases, all these were controlled, you know, as best of my abilities, you know, with bags and emasculation.
Gotcha.
And to set the seed. And, you know, when you set that seed, you know, put the pollen on the stigma and it goes down the pistil and it forms a little capsule at the end of that flower. It's about 1/4 inch long, and in that capsule there's about 300 to 500 seed.
You're right, just tiny little seed. Tiny seed you're working with.
Tiny seed. And, but you have to watch them, you know, the seed. I mean, you have to kind of pay close attention to them because, you know, a lot of your fungal diseases that get on flowers, if you don't clean that off altogether, you know, it'll go down there and kill that little developing seed capsule.
Right.
I mean, it's not that difficult. I've been doing it so many years, it's just second nature to me. But once that seed capsule forms, and then I found out that about 90 days after that, there's enough viable seed in that capsule. Yeah. And it's not exactly 90 days, you know. You know, I harvest that seed capsule. And that's usually into August, September.
Right.
The old way of doing it was wait till it turned brown. Right, and that would be in October, November. But the problem with that is if that dries and splits open,
then the seed's on the ground.
Most of your seed.
Right, seed's on the ground.
And I plant them, you know, once they dry, we clean them, and I plant them within a month or two. You know, I try to get them all planted. The old way of doing it was you collect them in the fall, you took them all the way to spring or later, but I find the longer you keep them, the less germination.
Right. The germination rates fall
down. You know, there's all kinds of mischief going on there. There's little wood mites and all kind of stuff gets in there. So, and just, I don't know, but I germinate mine within a month after they're dried and clean.
So this is about 18 months then. So from the time you pollinated the flower, collected the seed, started the seed, transplanted them twice.
Yes, from 50s then to 4-inch. Right. Now they will persist in these 4-inch a lot longer.
Right.
And cause, you know, and a lot of them will be discarded at this stage because, you know, I mean, I may be throwing away traits that I'd want in a mature plant, but I just can't keep them all.
Yeah, no. By the time you potted all these into 3-gallon containers in 2
if
years,
you see, if I potted all these, it could consume the entire patch. But but you know, leaf color, and I'll see most of these will bloom, and I would probably keep them in here at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe a little longer, but they get fairly root bound at 2 years. You know.
So you said you're selecting for several things right now.
Right. Yeah.
Anything in particular back here that's?
Well, let's see. Let's take a look at it. Okay.
Okay.
Well, in this group, you know, this is the 4-inch containers.
Yes.
That I got them in. Yeah. But if you can see the difference in a lot of these leaves, you see this dark leaf.
Yes.
I'm trying to select for dark leaf azaleas, and you can see these variegated leaves. And it takes a while. Like I say, this is probably plants that are in about 3rd generation of my seedlings that I've been pushing or trying to stack the variegated forms.
Right.
And in this particular line, it has a tendency to throw purple leaves, or dark leaves, not purple.
Yeah.
But you can see some of them have died, some of them are suffering.
This is survival of the fittest.
Right.
You know, this is the point. This is the point of having.
Yeah, it's
26,000.
That's right. So you know, by next year it might only be 16,000 living. You know,
right? Yeah. But you're trying to get a plant to the end user,
right?
That will grow for them.
You know, a plant that's got good roots can tolerate environmental stressors and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, some of these that passed away may have been ideal genetic things, but I got plenty in there. I only want to get the better ones.
Right.
And it'll pan out too.
Right. Well, so with this big giant group here, I mean, you've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
How many? I mean, at the end of the day, there may be 0.
It may be
things introduced, or 5. Right. I mean, you wouldn't know.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know.
It's of all the seedlings I've grown since the 70s. You know, so and it's kind of an interesting thing to watch them also.
So when we're talking about pollinating these flowers and isolating those flowers. Everybody loves their pollinators in their garden, their bees and everything, but they're your enemy, aren't they?
Well, when you're pollinating, when you're trying to do a controlled cross.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You want them out here, and you don't love them as much as we do. But if a bee goes from one flower to another,
that's right. They can spread the pollen.
Right.
And so if you're going to put that much energy into growing them from the seed and watching them that long, you kind of want to or need to know what you have.
Right.
You know, in the long run.
And you're putting some sort of bag over it after to keep the bees out of them.
I either put them in a bag or I isolate them in a greenhouse.
Oh, gotcha.
This group here is my probably bag.
Again, the flower crosses were made last year, February. For you, they're blooming pretty early.
They bloom in February, March, and April, and it depends on the plants. But there's about a 3-month time frame that I'm actually doing. So I mean, I may have done some in the past fall also. But I kind of add all them together.
Seed collected in late summer?
Yeah, August, 1st of September.
Okay, seed put in November-ish in a greenhouse?
November and December, yes.
In a greenhouse?
Yeah.
And then germinated January-ish?
Yeah. Usually it's about 7 days when they start germinating. If I can tell when conditions in my greenhouse may be messing up with my certain azaleas, I know that should germinate. So, you know, like it's a kind of a cool greenhouse, but I can tell the conditions by the germination.
Gotcha. And then you're getting up to about this size before you transplant them?
Well, yes, about this size or a little smaller, and they're kind of fragile. However, you know, the wintertime is a time when it's cold or wet and rainy, and so we're not working outside anyway. It's a good winter project, and also. When they're little tiny like that, like I said, they're extremely fragile. In the wintertime is a great time to pot up those plants because the conditions are mild, especially in the greenhouse. And so we just set in the greenhouse when it's, cold weather or whatever. And we'll just, I usually have some little hemostats that I do it with, but I'm not doing it now, but a pencil will work. And you see, that's a little
nice root.
Little root. Now these are a little older, but and the ones we do in January, maybe the roots may not be that tough, but the same process. And we just do this, and we fluff it in there, And this is a peat moss bed, pure peat moss.
Yeah, I see that.
I used to use sphagnum peat moss. I don't know, but just regular peat moss. There's pine bark down here. This is just a small sheet of peat moss
over
on
top of the bark, so
right.
the bark's draining underneath it.
Yeah, and the roots get in the pine bark.
Got it,
It kind of helps adapt. Pure peat moss, I find if I had this thing completely filled up with peat moss, it'd either be too wet or too dry.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's no
here.
middle ground, and it weigh a ton.
Oh yes,
Right.
But if you can see, look at there. You see under there?
Yeah, I see it.
It's the perlite,
Perlite
pine
and
bark mixture, and I'm putting it in this. So
it's already adapted to it.
it's adapted. It's kind of adapted to the pine bark and to the perlite. Just helps it drain a lot better. Well, maybe I put too much. But we just do that, and it's a good winter. It's a winter project, and you can move a lot faster with these because they're a little bit more rooted in. And we were saying there's about 25,000. There's still about 2,000 that we hadn't got to yet.
Right.
This is one of the remaining ones, but this is very, very close to what we usually do.
How long will it stay in that 50 cell tray before they go into these 4-inch?
Well, so we do that in December, January, February, and we use a low dose of liquid fertilizer.
Gotcha.
These little seedlings at this stage, I mean, I have burned many of them with fertilizer. They're very fragile. And the thing about it is you don't want like heavy fertilizer. You want the plants to kind of push the roots searching for nutrients.
Right.
So that causes low dose liquid fertilizer is enough to keep them from turning too yellow, but it makes the plant sturdy and to grow.
Gotcha. And you can't see any traits here. I mean, it's here before we're.
Yeah, it's here. These, so that's why we pot up about all of them, even the smaller ones. And if you look in this tray here, this might have been a small one, the one that didn't make it. But we don't know. We just try to keep all of them. This one here, and just a lot of different little traits showing up.
And you're starting to use some actual slow release fertilizer at this point.
Yeah, this is slow release, but if you can tell, even here, it is a light application.
Right.
I'm trying to develop root systems here, and I just feel like if you have too much fertilizer, you tend to make a weak plant at this stage.
Right, and it may be not telling the whole story of how tough the plant is.
That's
if
right.
you're masking all of it.
Right.
If you grow it in absolute perfect conditions.
Yeah.
All of them might survive.
Yeah, or if you kept them in a greenhouse, and honestly, these have not been sprayed with any type of pesticide.
Right.
Maybe we had to use natural, maybe once or twice to control fungus gnats in the greenhouse. That's just kind of a given. It's a
and especially with that peat bed. With that peat bed, you're going to get fungus gnats.
But it's kind of like a biological, application, and it really controls them. But there's not been anything sprayed on them, and that's kind of my goal. I don't want to spray things on them. I could spray fungicides and probably keep a lot of these that have, that have deceased, but I don't really want that. I want strong roots. And these smaller seed, it's amazing how many little these are seed capsules actually, and inside is all the little seed. And I usually put them in envelopes.
Yeah.
And let them dry for about a month or so. And when you cut them like this, you have to kind of crack the capsule. They don't split per se.
It's important to put them in paper and not plastic, right?
Well, yeah, because
plastic,
plastic. Yeah, and that's what even my pollen. When I collect pollen,
yes,
I put it in paper, because paper actually draws the moisture away. It actually works better than these gel packs.
Gotcha.
Things.
Yeah,
and so
the same thing. That's why your seeds come in paper packets.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, there's a reason for
That's
it.
right.
It's not because they haven't figured out plastic yet.
Right.
It's because they did figure out plastic is bad for them.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so you figured out kind of how to make these crosses, collect this seed, and get to this point in 18 months, but you're a long way from where you would, through how long would you observe them?
Well, like I said, I'll observe these for 2, 3, maybe 4 years,
Okay,
and they
gotcha.
get extremely root bound. But this year, I'll start selecting like the foliage colors and the plants that are healthy.
Right.
And I may move them into a 6-inch container.
Uh-huh.
You know, I may leave them here till next year, but I usually, you know, looking for, if I find the traits that I'm looking for, I usually focus on those, and I'll maybe pot them up in a 6-inch container. I may even keep them in the greenhouse if I feel like I really want to save it, because it's kind of already proved itself,
Yeah.
you know, enough. But once, you know, get it in gallons, and then we'll keep them out here, and then we'll move them into a 3-gallon. And even though this is the deep south, I mean, you know, we still get down, this past year we got down to 16 with high winds, you know, and so I leave them just whatever comes, you know.
Well, obviously we've been talking about nothing in this video except for variegated foliage and red
Right.
foliage and all these. Flowers are matter, right? Flowers
Yes,
matter on
and
azaleas.
we're still, you know, we're still doing the multi-seasonal blooms, and all of these should have remontancy, and I'm looking at that also, and flower color.
Right.
But another trait I guess we bypassed, we've been talking about leaf color, is bicolored flowers.
Gotcha.
And a lot of these, you know, I'd like to produce, you know, a really nice variegated plant with
Variegated flowers on a variegated plant?
With a bicoloredness or something like that. But, you know, will that plant be too crazy for the consumer? We'll just see, but there's no reason not to go for it.
Yes. And then another step after all those other steps is that you're going to have to figure out whether it roots easy and whether growers can grow it, right?
That's right. You know, propagation, if it's tough to propagate, that's kind of like the, you know, that kind of eliminates it. And whether it's good in production. I mean, I might grow 100 out here in this isolated area, but if they start ramping it up, you know, big time production, it may collapse. You may not perform as well. And so I've seen plants do that. You know, we go, then we start ramping them up, and they just turn into, you know, one reason or the other, they just don't do well in mass production. And usually if they do well in mass production and they do well in the ground, they usually are a very tough plant. You know.
Gotcha.
But you know, if you know, disease resistance, I just kind of you know, like I was telling you, I don't do a lot of pesticides.
Right. Yeah. You're trying to figure. They're trying to let the weak ones go.
Right.
Let the weak ones go.
But you know, we do get a lot of beneficials here, so that's you know, we have to keep that in mind. But the plants are evaluated at numerous other places before they, you know.
It's not just here on your Louisiana property. They're going over to Alabama. They're going to different sites around.
And you know, we have them planted in the ground now, and that's something key. And once we start once I've selected them, and that process of propagation and just looking at them is a long, you know, 4 or 5 years, and then things start scattering out, you know, not making the grade. You're looking at 6 to 8 more years before maybe that plant's even released.
Wow.
And because you know, once you get the ball rolling and you have years and years of plants coming, you know, rotating, it doesn't seem it really passes fast. You know?
Right. Yeah.
If you started out with one crop and you had 8 years would be a long time before you
but you've got some over here that have been in the process for several years. So
And some years in my pollination is, you know, like this year, when I did these, I had some gold set out that I wanted to do that year. That was last spring, and regardless of the weather, I was going to have them in the greenhouse. I was going to make these crosses. But it was still a good year. This past spring was a horrible year for pollinate because, you know, we had that freezing December.
Set them
and
back.
Then somewhere in March, when everything had that much new foliage on it, you know, we dipped down to 26 degrees for about 4 to 6 hours. Well, you know, so I have a few seed caps. I don't have this many.
Gotcha, for the next year. So next year is a good year.
Like this year, we'll probably only have maybe 4,000 or 5,000 seedlings, or maybe even less than that.
Right.
You know, it's hard to say, but we do a lot. And in our in-ground plantings, we have seed capsules out there of certain plants.
Right.
You know, so So it's kind of exciting, and just to watch them grow. And,
Right.
It's amazing. Here I'm counting my chickens before they hatch, but usually when the temperatures start cooling down, it's been pretty hot this year. We've been hitting 100, and the heat index is 117. But as the temperature moderates, these plants, they will really kick in.
Yeah.
And this high temperatures and stuff, it eliminates some of
It's
them also.
yeah, selective, right.
Right, but I'm not going to put the air conditioner on them,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, buddy.
Well, thank you.
We always love coming down here to
Anytime.
Louisiana
Come
and
on
visiting.
down.
Yeah. And I saw you in Raleigh just a few weeks ago. So this
right.
has been a great time for me.
Right.
Twice in a month.
And did you see any alligators yet? Or
We saw Alabama. We haven't seen any
Okay.
Louisiana alligators yet.
it's too hot for the alligators.
It is too hot. It's too hot for the alligators.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much.